Good morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boissonou with my co-host Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by Rob Smiley Chrisman. How are you today, Rob? Oh my God, your smile lights up a room, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, so we may as well just dive right into it because it is, even though it's a short week and the market is closing early on Wednesday, it will be closed all day on Thursday for what again? Independence
I don't
Day,
know.
right,
I've been
kids?
busy on Thursday. There's no holidays here. I'm in England.
Yes. So it is a short week. So job week is always enough to freak me out just because it is a lot. But then when you have light trading, probably because people are not going to come back on Friday, not all of them anyway.
Nope.
So we've got ADP
And many of them
tomorrow.
left on Wednesday.
We have ADP tomorrow where they're expecting 160,000 new jobs created. We're also getting the Fed minutes right before the market closes early, so we got that going for us. On Friday, my favorite, BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, they are expecting 190,000 job creations, which let's just assume is complete and total crap, and that is not what we actually have. And they're expecting that the unemployment rate is going to stay the same. So we'll see how that goes. But Rob, did you know that I think that BLS is total crap?
I read that in several publications.
Yeah. So it was
I
interesting.
think the Wall Street Journal, they report it there.
Well,
No,
Jerome
but
Powell even acknowledged that there could be an issue with those numbers, but the jobs data, the overstated jobs data from them in 2023 was an average of 94,000 jobs overstated every month. Isn't that crazy? And that's not even looking at 2024 yet. So there is
So wait, an average of 100,000 jobs reported, over-reported
overstated.
every month. So just me, but if I was the head of that department, I would make an adjustment of about 100,000 every month, and then I'd be dead on.
Yeah, if I were that head of that department, I'd fire myself and hire someone who knew what the hell they were doing. So there is this thing called the quarterly census of employment and wages, QCEW. This is a new thing to me. I wasn't aware of this until the last few months. They are looking at 12 million establishments. BLS is looking at, I don't know why this is the number, but this is the number, 666,000. So you guys figure out what that's all about. Could have something to do with their flawed numbers. And QCEW, I'll have to practice saying that in front of the mirror. They cover about 95% of the jobs. So that number that they come out with is much more accurate. It is the number. So, but it's quarterly. They don't do it, it's not like BLS, which is supposed to give you a decent snapshot once a month. But it's been rough going. And I've heard them say we're understaffed. We don't have enough people to handle the job. And my feel is the way that this moves the market every single month, they need to get it together. But that's just me. I'm not in charge. Rob,
What do you think, Rob?
I'm not in charge either.
Don't you
But if
think
you
you're more in
were,
charge than me?
So if they were, this morning I heard, so I listen to Bloomberg radio because I can't stand the noise and flashing lights at CNBC. And so they had a fellow on today who listed off the measures of inflation: the consumer price index, the producer price index, the core CPI, the core PPI, the PCE, the super PCE, the super this, the core that. And there were, 10 measures of inflation, some of which apparently the Federal Reserve pays attention to and others that they don't. The same thing could be said for, weekly jobless claims, the non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate, the other measures of employment. And I think, Audrey, to your point, and I'm not disagreeing, but I think that as long as they are consistent, as long as non-farm payrolls isn't measured one way one month and then they change it entirely the next month and don't tell anybody, I think what you have to do is watch the trends.
Right.
Pick an index and watch the trends. You can torture the numbers all you like, but it's the trends I think that the Federal Reserve pays attention to, because no number is going to be perfect. And I think Ed flashed up the fact that, something comes from a phone survey. Well,
Yes.
nobody ever, well, put it this way. I think I get phone surveys and then I ignore them and I let them go into voicemail, and they never leave a message, or I'll get a text saying, "Hey, would you participate in this survey?" And I delete, so I don't know who picks up the phone
I
anymore.
know, right?
And I don't know how different, I don't know all the mechanics of how each one of the employment data points are collected. But like I said, I think you just have to watch the trends, and that's important.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And a snapshot in time is nothing. So one, random thing is absolutely pointless. And also the way things can just change on a dime. You get something, but again, my gripe with BLS is they're so consistently incorrect and in such a big way, and it does move the markets. I mean, if the Fed had the jobs data that was correct for 2023, I wonder what their decisions would have would they have been the same decisions, right?
Yeah, I not to send this down a political path, but I will right off the bat here. I attended a social event recently and was talking to somebody who will remain nameless and sexless, but the person said, "Well, every new job in 2023 and 2024 has gone to illegal immigrants." And I said, "Really? No, I didn't know that." Oh yeah. Yeah, all the illegal immigrants are getting all the jobs, and so all of our numbers are wrong.
Ah,
So that was news to me.
yeah, no,
There's all kinds of things out
there's all
there.
kinds of things people believe.
Right.
So since you brought it up, let's talk politics. Just kidding.
No, let's
Just
happy
want to
to.
give you a heart attack. So Kevin is
No.
in England. And so what I mean by that, let's talk about politics in Europe. That's safer, right? So
Yeah,
Kevin is
much
in
safer.
England. He was just in France, and the political landscape just across the entire
The
world
world.
is shifting.
Yeah,
So
shifting a lot.
as the demographics age and as people get older, they tend to be more conservative, right? Not always, but in a lot of cases. And so we're seeing this happen as the population is aging and moving into retirement and much less interested in funding anything other than their own retirement. It is really a changing landscape, not just here, but everywhere. And so, Kevin,
Yeah.
what are you seeing in England and
So that's an interesting comment, but it's not quite correct
your
because
opinion is
uh,
it's not
in,
quite correct? Go ahead.
well, so in France, they're going conservative,
Yes.
which is very interesting. Um, and the reason they're going conservative is they want to disrupt what they see as the current system. And I think that disrupts part is what the trend is, because in England, it's the other way around. They're going towards labor, and you even have companies supporting labor, which normally they would not. But they're just tired of what's going on, and so they're trying to disrupt the system by voting whoever's in out. So I think you can almost say the same thing in the United States. That's what people tend to do. They're not voting for somebody; they're kind of voting against somebody.
Well, when you're listening to people who are geopolitical experts, which we've been very interested in recently, they do describe the evolution of an economy as it goes from the majority of their population being younger and then middle-aged and then
Yep.
older. And that is what I was referring to, even though you wanted to mansplain it to me and tell me I was wrong. That's fine. Anyway, the bottom line is it is really a shifting environment out there. And it does, I mean, I would agree with you actually, Kevin, that, a lot of times you're not voting in favor of something so much as you're voting against something else.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. I heard a stat on the primary elections in the United States about how, for the first time ever, most people when they vote for an election, almost everybody votes for the president, then they vote for the governor, then they vote for the senator and the congressman. But then as they go down the ballot, they stop voting for things like the water department and the pier harbor patrolmen and the judges because they don't know who the players are and they just don't vote. But this time, for the very first time ever, people didn't vote for president, but they voted for everything else.
Well, we
So,
figured out how important voting for judges is, that's for sure. Rob, what would you like to tell us?
No, I'd like to ask you, since you're dealing with borrowers and this is a mortgage show, do you have borrowers whose outlook on owning a home changes based on politics?
It
yes.
depends on the
Kevin's saying
borrower.
yes.
There's no yes or no to that, in my opinion. It depends on the borrower. Why are you saying yes, Kevin?
I'm saying yes because I have had 2 clients in the last 2 weeks that bailed out of a deal because they're worried about the economy and they were in a contract and, oh, we're deciding not to buy. And it's like, just, shoot me now. Because, loan's all ready to go and, they're just moving along and all of a sudden, oh, we're not going to buy. There's a fear out there. And it's hard to, how do you deal with that? You can address it up front. You can talk to them about their options and everything. And both clients, I'm good about talking to my clients and here's why you want to do this. Here's why you don't want to do this. And, you tell me which way you want to go and I'll go that way. And both of them, oh yeah, we're definitely going to do this. And then the next thing when, it came to put the tires to the road, they didn't want to do it. They canceled.
Well, so I think I think I've talked about this before where I had somebody who woke up one morning, literally as we were about to close escrow, and decided they didn't want to buy the place they were in, that they were in contract for. And it was a numbers thing. It was literally walking through the numbers line by line and saying, okay, so here is X, Y, and Z, whatever that the case may be. And he saw that he would come out way ahead by buying now. And again, it is really, in my opinion, it is, and I have a client right now where he started going online and looking at the rates, and guess what? The rates were lies online. So he thinks that, he's going to get a 6.5% rate when he is buying a place using a first and second combo, putting down, 15%. And so he was plugging numbers into the system. They weren't done correctly. And then he was getting these rates. And then on top of that, even once he did put the correct scenario in there, or we changed it, so now he's going to put down 20%, he was being quoted online 0.5% less than the actual market. And so you've got to be willing to go. I went into the weeds with this guy because I know him and I know he's nervous and I know that, I just needed to help him understand what was real. And at the end of the day, we were able to get through that. And so it is really being engaged and not being afraid to go. You got to go from the LE and maybe before that through the numbers with your client and make sure they know what they're getting into up front. And then they're much less likely to, because like with my guy, he didn't wake up in the morning going, I'm going to cancel because I'm afraid of the fees or I don't know the numbers. He was concerned about a tenant situation. That's a whole different thing. And so again, what are the pain points for your borrowers, and being so engaged and part of the conversation and making sure you're confronting all that head on is what I'm seeing. Rob, what do you think?
I was surprised to hear about Kevin and and Kevin, your buyers who backed, I couldn't quite tell if it was Trump versus Biden or whether it was economy in general, because people love to argue and discuss the what ifs. And what if Biden is elected? Is it going to be the end of the world? Is it going to be the end of the United States as we know it, the democracy? No. If Donald Trump is elected, will it spell the end of democracy and the end of the United States? Probably not. But you have the far right and the far left saying
will be.
The sky is going to fall. The sky is going to fall. I always
find that interesting because we survived 4 years of Trump and the sky didn't fall.
And we've been doing just fine with Joe Biden, right?
Yeah. And
so you could say, well, the price of my oatmeal has gone up under Biden. Well, but look at what the deficit did under Donald Trump. That dirty little secret. It's not a dirty little secret, but I mean, when you start looking at the numbers of what actually happened during the Trump administration or during any administration, I mean, government people can't seem to say no to spending. Spend,
Yep.
spend, spend.
That's across the
And
board.
yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And they spending, they don't want to say no because it helps the economy, it helps the job market. They don't want to cut any programs. I think the last we're going off track here slightly, but I think the last government agency that ever went away was during the Carter administration 45 years ago. And I think it was the Department of Energy, I think, or there was some department that they ended it. And so people ask me about the FHFA. Oh, they are the conservators of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Well, you'll never hear anybody from the FHFA say, let's privatize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac again because we don't want jobs. Okay. They like having Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac there. Getting back to the economy, I think I would argue that the president does have some influence over the economy, but so much of what's going on in the economy is based on prior administrations that the amount of influence that a given elected official has is somewhat muted, but it is psychological.
Right.
And there are
Very
people
much.
who are deathly afraid of Biden being reelected and people who are deathly afraid of Trump coming in.
Yep.
So, but I was getting back to the reason why I ask about, are you seeing borrowers be nervous about the political situation? Kevin, I would have said I would have said, regardless of administration, almost.
Yep. Awesome. Regardless of administration, regardless of political stuff, shouldn't have effect. Now, politics didn't affect either one of my loans. Oh, we lost you there.
You know, you don't grow up wanting to be a renter.
No, exactly. Your Wi-Fi is crapped out there for a second, Rob.
Mine?
Yes.
Huh.
You froze for a moment, right at the very
Okay.
most important part of what you were going to say.
Yeah, I read off tomorrow's winning lottery number, and you guys didn't catch that?
I can't believe it. Terrible.
Anyway,
Yeah. So what do you see,
Barbara
Rob,
said-
with the mortgage market going forward from your point of view?
from my point of view, so people have given up, I would say, writing to me and asking when are we going to have 3% 30-year fixed rates again?
That's good.
Because I think the smart folks know that we don't want another pandemic and we don't want North Korea attacking Japan. We don't want an environment that pushes rates that low. We also
Right.
don't want an environment where, I will be political here a little bit, but some months ago, earlier this year, either Donald Trump or one of his advisors said, well, we're pushing forward a plan to have the president have more influence in the decision making of the Federal Reserve, making them less independent.
Yeah.
And you ask anybody on Wall Street, any bond investor, anybody who knows anything, they don't want the president telling Jerome Powell exactly what to do. So the Federal Reserve is independent. I think that's important to keep its independence.
Right.
In terms of the mortgage market, we're in July already. We're already done with the first half of 2024.
Yeah, crazy.
It's flipping.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
It is.
Coming down the stretch.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of companies out there have made necessary cuts. A lot more companies are profitable now than they were 6 months or a year ago.
Yep.
And so now some of the more unprofitable companies, of course, have gone out of business. But I think what I'm sensing is there is a little bit of fear that the fabled summer buying season isn't quite panning out like people had hoped. And I know hope isn't a strategy, but it just seems like, when you talk to people, oh yeah, the phone's ringing more often, or yeah, I've got my pipeline starting to pick up a little bit, but it's not a huge jump. And I think some companies and some individuals are a little bit nervous about that. Now, the economy, in my opinion, my humble opinion, Audrey, you and I have talked about this. It's continuing to move along. You know,
It is
unemployment data
chugging
aside,
along.
it's humming along. It's doing its
Yeah.
thing,
Stock
and
market's doing great.
stock market is good. You know, but there are some signs that I'm watching, namely credit card debt going above $1 trillion, and the interest
Right.
rate on that credit card debt at 25 or 30% means that they are paying interest on previous spending, and they're paying interest instead of spending that money, you know, going on vacation, for example. And so the consumer is showing some signs of getting tired a little bit,
Yes.
but I don't think we're going to plunge into a recession. And if we plunge into a recession, frankly, that means lower rates, right?
Well,
So
and I would just like to say that, so we talked about recession to the point where we started joking around about we were going to have to take a shot every time someone said the R word. It was recession, recession. And you, my friend, were from, this is 2 years ago. From 2 years ago, you were very steadfast in, you didn't think it was going to happen. And so I would just like to give you a moment where you can bask in the glow of you
a,
were correct.
a kudo,
Yes, that would be a kudo.
an
And
attaboy,
yeah,
could have gone the other way though. Could have
wait,
gone
it
the other
could
way.
have, it could have. And I think that's what's important is all the trying to figure out what's coming next. We're all doing it just because we're trying to advise our clients correctly, right? But the reality is something can come in from from left field and screech, all bets are off, right?
Yeah, I guess, but the economy, the U.S. economy, it's a huge moving beast,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so you can say, well, this is doing that over there, and that's doing that over there. But generally speaking, the economy is doing okay, even with rates where they are.
Right.
Now, that being said, in terms of if you look once again at and I won't go too far down the capital markets trail here. But if you look at treasury rates and mortgage rates, you know, mortgage rates are always higher than treasury rates, and they're higher because of credit risk, right? And
Yep.
because of prepayment risk,
Right.
because somebody could pay off their loan. So the spread between the two goes up and down. Now, a year ago, it had widened out. 2 years ago, it was wide. Now the spread has come back down. So you could have treasury rates flat as a table, but if investors continue to demand mortgage-backed securities and continue to be comfortable with ability to repay and the fact that these borrowers are not, you know, we're not seeing a wave of foreclosures or delinquencies or forbearances. And so the credit risk is okay. And then no one's really prepaying in an unusual way. You could see that spread between mortgage rates and treasury rates diminish a little bit. So mortgage rates may actually improve some relative to treasury rates. I wouldn't
Yep.
be at all surprised if that happened.
I would not be there.
So that would be great. Do you think, I mean, the projections that we're seeing on rates are continuously changing, continuing to change and becoming less and less optimistic about where we might be in a year or two. And I'm not seeing anything that says anything better than a 6 from NBA, from FHFA. Like, so, I mean, if
Yeah.
we're in this, we're in a range right now where the whole narrative that people are waiting for rates to come down to what?
Mhm.
Like, what are you waiting them to come for them to come down to? That's the conversation I
I
think that is.
let me throw something back at you two, because you are in the trenches with borrowers, and whether you're giving them Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loans or FHA, VA or hard money, you know, whatever you're dealing with in terms of borrowers. Do borrowers base their decision making on your ability to predict interest rates, or are they paying you to give them the best service and the best products that you have up your sleeve?
It's a combo, Rob, because again, because there's so much negativity out there and so much misinformation in the media, it does actually pay to know something. So it to be able to say, I know you saw a headline that said foreclosures are up 175 basis or 175% from last year. But the reality is that was when we had a moratorium and we're still below 1% on foreclosures. And that is the lowest. I mean, it's one of the historical lows. So being able to know enough to be able to have an intelligent conversation is important. Can we predict the rates? No. And do we need to be able to do that? No, no one can do it. Obviously, none of the economists get it right for sure. So I think it's a combo. What do you think, Kevin?
It's definitely a combo. They're paying for our expertise. I was explaining to somebody here in England, actually. I was saying that it's kind of like, when you pick your doctor. Do you want the doctor as the cheapest rates, or do you want the one who's the best expert at curing what disease you have? I think people are looking for someone who's got knowledge in addition to, providing a rate.
And by the way, they want both. We know that, right? We
Oh, they all
know
do.
they want the smartest, best person for the lowest price. However,
Yep.
that's not how it always works out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting discussion topic, how you pick a doctor. But this is a mortgage show. It's not a medical show, but I don't even know how. I'm not big into healthcare.
You know what,
So I don't.
Bob, it's the same way. You ask your doctor, oh, I have an eye issue. Which eye doctor do you recommend I go to that specializes in this? And your doctor says, I recommend you go see this doctor. The same thing
to see if
the
they're
mortgage
covered
world.
by insurance.
Right, but you still want the best. And if you looking to buy a house, they say, well, who's the best mortgage person? They're going to refer who's the best they think is the best mortgage person. Same thing with me. When I have clients who ask for a good real estate agent, I'm thinking, well, who's the best one that's really going to serve their needs, not that's just going to like sell them a house.
Right. So Ed flashed up a note, data without context. I wish I should have saved that. I should have put in my commentary, but recently, like in the last several months, I saw a headline, mortgage delinquencies double.
Right.
I'm like, holy smokes, wow. I got, what, double? So when I clicked on the story, they were talking about some county somewhere, and the numbers had gone from like 3 units to 6 units.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
doubling.
wow.
That's
Oh, wow.
astounding.
Astounding. Yes, astounding. Oh, they doubled. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much, to your point, there's a lot of headlines out there that borrowers and potential borrowers get misled by. It's important to have somebody knowledgeable like you two and other people on this call and other people in our industry, frankly, to be able to say, okay, let's cut through some of this stuff. Let's talk about what you want in life. And if you want to be a renter and be subject to rent increases and somebody pounding on the wall next door, or 3-flight walk up or whatever, fine, stay at being a renter. But if you
Right.
want a white picket fence in a school district that your kids are comfortable in for the next 15 years of their lives, then let's talk.
Exactly. Exactly. And Ed did have a great point. He had another great point too. He said the credit card debt is a bad metric because we have 4 million people a year turning 18 and getting credit cards. A better metric would be average balance per person, which I haven't seen that number, but I think it is a consensus that credit card debt has increased substantially. But it is always important to remember data without context is not useful at all.
I looked at, I don't know, 3 months ago, 8 months ago, sometime in the last several months. I looked up because somebody said, "Oh, I applied for a Nordstrom's card, and the interest rate on my Nordstrom's card is 28%." And I said, "No way." They said, "Yeah, check it out." And sure enough, I went onto the Nordstrom's credit card site, and there it was, in the small print, 28%. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, Nordstrom's going to charge me 28% on my balance when I go buy my once a year necktie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
29.99.
it's crazy.
So I keep asking, so credit card or not credit card, credit report fees have gone up exponentially in the last couple of years. And I've asked a couple different places and sources, has the same happened in other industries or is it just mortgage? So like when you're standing at line at a store and they're like, hey, would you like a credit card? And they run your credit, has that gone up 400%? Do you have any idea whether that's
so
the case or
so
not?
I need to put in a shameless plug for my humble little commentary. I don't know how many people who are tuning in get my free commentary. If you want to sign up,
Everyone who's smart is listening. Is reading.
www.robchrisman.com. Check it out. But today's opening paragraph, and I'm sure you guys have been too busy. I mean, Kevin's off having tea and
What?
crumpets and playing croquet. But today's
Yep.
opening paragraph, I talk about FICO, Fair Isaac, and the fact that their salaries, they got some sweet salaries of their employees. I have a site for that. And there are people who talk about Equifax and TransUnion, Experian, and FICO forming this cartel and really, basically, for lack of a better term, reaming borrowers and lenders because they're because of their costs. And
Yep.
it's
Because they
it's a
can.
big deal. I have not seen, but to your question, Audrey, it's not like I follow the plumbing industry or the picture framing industry,
I
rug
know.
industry. I don't know what they probably, everybody probably has issues with certain companies doing certain things to them, but um, yeah, it's a real problem. And the CFPB kind of says, well, you know,
We don't
they've got,
regulate it, as they say.
we
Well,
can't
we
tell them
gave
what to
Mark
do.
I gave Mark a hard time last week. We had the CFPB on, and because I said you guys are very focused on junk fees, and I get it. Like, I don't like these credit report fees either, but yet the GSEs are charging LLPAs that are crazy. So to do a first and second combo at 85%, you have to pay 7/8 extra. Show me the algorithm that says that the risk associated with that loan is commensurate with that
7, 8.
on. It's crazy. So I'm
Mhm.
like, the bigger picture is we have huge LOPAs and et cetera that are impacting pricing for borrowers and helping to drive this unaffordable issue. And yet we're focused on credit reports. But let's go back, because the reason I was thinking about the whole credit card thing this morning was your first intro page on your commentary. And I thought it was very interesting to note that Equifax was founded in 1899. I had no idea that the bureaus were that old, and that the modern credit card was developed in the 1950s. And just a little reminder that as a female, you couldn't get one without your husband's signature well into the 70s, which is not that long ago, which is a little
Did
crazy.
did you have a card back in when you were in high school
Oh, you're so
in
funny.
the 1950s?
Anyway, so yes, by all means, everyone should be reading your commentary every day. It is chock full of interesting things. But to your point, we've got really, really well-paid FICO executives, and their stock is at $1,500 a share. I didn't know that. Huh,
I know, I was surprised.
I'm shocked.
I mean, you can,
Crazy.
yeah,
So you
I
said
mean,
we should buy it at $15 a share.
what's that?
100,
Oh, 1,500 a share.
1,500 a share.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
crazy.
all right, so I'm going to put on my MBA cap here
Please
briefly.
do.
And whether a stock, I mean, whether it's stock is $6 a share or $60 a share or 600 or 6,000, it really doesn't matter. If you look at Berkshire Hathaway, for example, I mean, there's Berkshire Hathaway stock went up to, I mean, some inordinate amount, and it's just a matter of the price earnings ratio, what kind of dividend rate that pays, if any, and so forth. So 1,500, but there is a psychological factor to, would you rather buy, 100 shares of 150 or $15 a share, or would you rather buy, or one share of $1,500 share stock? There's some psychology that enters into it. Most people would rather buy more shares
Right.
at a lower price than just one
Yep.
share. But anyway, that aside, yeah, there are things that go on, and then you have another school of thought that says, well, wait a minute, the biggest cost of any loan continues to be the originator. The average point, call the average comp a point on a loan. So
Right.
$300,000 loan, that's $30,000. Well, if your credit cost is $100, that kind of pales in comparison to a point, or 3,000, sorry, $3,000 for 3,000. But once again, to your point, when you talk about, when you throw in loan level price adjustments, and when you throw in homeowners insurance, and when you throw in, condo fees or HOA fees, the affordability just gets worse and worse and worse.
Mhm.
It is impacting borrowers out there.
It is. And I've been grinding on this literally for years. I'm like, show us. You're saying it's risk-based pricing. Show me. I don't believe them at all. At all. I mean, it is just so obviously, in my opinion, a money grab. And it is bad for the consumer, and it's disingenuous when you're saying that you're trying to serve the underserved and you're trying to help people, and we need to promote affordability, yet the pricing is very, very expensive. All right. Well, moving right along. So
I think once again, Ed, Kevin,
it's on
Audrey,
fire today.
I think you should have Ed on the show next week.
I know, right?
That aside, Ed, yeah, the cost per loan, I think, is 12, 13 grand a loan. It's
Okay.
still up there.
Okay. So let's take a moment on that, shall we? I have asked numerous times to see the actual P&Ls on where that number is coming from. And recently we've had a little insight into that when we find out that things like private airplanes that the heads of IMBs are running around the country so they can have dinner with each other in, are sometimes on those P&Ls. So before we start talking about LO comp, let's get a little look at those P&Ls and see what numbers are going into that number. And then
I
also,
suggest you should have Marina Walsh on the show the week after Ed is on the show.
okay, got it. Wait, Marina Walsh. Oh, she's NBA, right?
She puts those numbers
Oh,
together.
she does. Oh, I would love to talk to her. So anyway, yeah.
I'll warn her.
What?
I will warn her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Prep her.
Listen, all I want is to know the real deal, right? And people throw these numbers around, and I have pointed out to regulators that, and to the heads of companies, the cost per loan has gone up exponentially. The part that the loan officer is making has not. Like, I'm not making more now than I used to make. I am making the same amount now or less in some.
Compliance is very expensive.
It's the regulators and I've told them, I'm like, there needs to be some sort of evidence of an ROI before you implement some new regulation, before you even know whether it's going to help the consumer, right? We want to help the consumer. And then as far as tech, I mean, tech is great, but is it really paying off in the end? Because ultimately, the borrower wants to go online. They want to do a little investigation. They want to know something. I'm going to need a Benadryl pretty soon, or a Dramamine, so that I can keep up with Kevin's movements on his camera. Good God. Anyway, the regulatory cost, the tech cost, and to what end? I mean, how much and what part of the process has really improved with all this tech? Your borrowers don't see their disclosures anymore. They don't know their numbers. They don't feel, and they still want that human touch.
Speaking of tech, Kevin, are you going to Stonehenge on this trip?
No Stonehenge. No.
No. All right. That was
Speaking.
Yeah. Go for the rocks.
cutting edge back.
Oh yeah, it was really cutting edge.
Right.
Listen, you go to Stonehenge and you do have a lot of questions, I will say.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
anyway, someone
Did
said,
I derail the conversation by
yeah,
bringing up?
well, I don't know
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that or Kevin, like, I feel like I'm in the middle of some sort of bad boat ride. So stop moving.
So I'm using my
Kevin.
iPhone. It fell off the stand it's on. So
All right, you can't do much about that, right?
no.
So, yeah. So I think compliance and tech and this idea that you get rid of the humans is not a good one, because when you're doing that, you are eliminating things like you're having a conversation with a borrower, and it's through the course of that conversation that they say that one thing that makes you realize, hey, what about that? You don't even know what you're missing out on.
So for the group's benefit, Audrey and I, Audrey kindly invited me to speak at a San Francisco camp event last week. And one of the discussion topics was youth in our industry. And I was making the point that I've seen work in other areas. And that is, hey, bring somebody under the age of 40, or bring somebody for free who's new to your company to the next meeting. And that's a good way to get people involved in organizations. And it's a good way for people to newer people to see what's going on out there. And I agree 100%. I keep rallying on the, it's a people business, and,
is.
you know, other, you know, whether they are financial planners or real estate agents, they don't say, go to the internet and type in great rates and that get your loan that way. They will refer you to Audrey or Kevin or whoever that might be. But I'm going to put the two of you on the spot here, because none of us are getting any younger, right? And so Audrey and or Kevin, are you mentoring anybody? Have you brought in anybody to take over your book of business eventually? Or are you just kind of saying, I'm just gonna be a lone wolf until they carry me out feet first?
Yeah, it's
So
carrying me out feet first.
I do not see any end to my doing what I'm doing. And also my donation to the industry is this basically. And so I'm not mentoring, not that I wouldn't, and not that I don't talk to people all the time through the course of this little endeavor we have here. So I have people call me and email me or I run into them at something, and we have great conversations, and I encourage and if somebody asked or I saw an opportunity, I would. But you're right, there does need to be a mentorship. And actually there was at that little event the other night, which that conversation around age was really spirited. People had a lot of opinions, which I think both of us found surprising, right? It was something. But my thing is, at what point, why are we all being defined by an age? Like by a number, like how old I am has nothing to do with my effectiveness or my drive or what I want to accomplish. And so whether I'm
Audrey, that's
younger,
because you're still 33, okay?
what?
You're still 33. Of course, you're speaking from that point of view.
I'm so much better than I was when I was 33. I got to tell you, way better. I was still in the la la land of, oh, if I'm supposed to get a loan, I'll get a loan. No, that is so dumb. I am so over it. So I have done huge adjustments in the last number of years. We won't even say how many, but yeah, I think it is important that we are looking towards how well this industry carry on. And do we teach these lessons, which I feel like, I'm definitely not quiet about it, to other people if they choose to tune in, about what's important. How do you work with your client? What do they need? How do you adjust to their needs? How do you make sure that they're covered? All of that, right?
So one can make the argument that if you are a leader of a company, not so much the individual loan officer, because as we all know, I think the average loan officer is 84 years old. All right. So,
Approximately.
but if you are a company and you want to live on in eternity, you need a succession plan, and you need to think to yourself, all right, we are dealing with millennial first-time home buyers here who are 29 years old or 32 years old. Do they want to deal with a 75-year-old, Frank the loan officer with the steel case desk and the fake potted palm in the corner, taking that loan app on a yellow piece of paper? Probably not. You kind of gravitate towards it's kind of like when I get on an airplane, I want to see a little white hair on the pilots. I want to see some stripes on their sleeve, but I don't want the pilot coming on in a walker, with a lobster bib on, because they're drooling. I don't want, I mean, but on the other hand, I've been on some small planes where the pilot is like, it's like Doogie Howser. And it's like, really? Aren't you late for high school class?
Yeah.
What are you doing piloting this plane? So it's an interesting conversation to have about how, going back to our earlier discussion about how you pick a loan officer, and who do you gravitate towards in terms of age. And I think that going back to the leadership of a company, you want to try to inject younger people into your company because you want your company to last for a long
Yes.
time. You
100%.
don't want You don't want 50 LOs and the minimum, the youngest one is 63. You know,
Right,
you just don't want that. That's not a recipe for
right,
success.
right.
Now, the individual loan officers may not want, Biff loan officer, mentor, they don't want to mentor somebody who's just out of college, right? But company leadership may want that.
Yep.
So,
So there was a company that sponsored the other night at this event called Socotra Capital. They're out of, I think, Sacramento. I'm not entirely sure.
Sacramento.
And they have a mentoring program for young people. And there were two guys there who were young. And every time you see them having a booth anywhere or anywhere, they've got young people. That is an investment. Like you have to put money into that. And I loved that they do that. And I loved that you've got these people who are showing up to these events and they are absorbing what the industry is. And it's I think the old and the new is very important. But, I mean, go ahead, guess my age. I mean, can you tell how old I am based on how I look and how I act? Maybe, maybe not.
I already
But
told him you're 33, Audrey.
yeah, yeah. So, and by the way, I just want to briefly mention there is, it's called summer camp. It's the California Association of Mortgage Professionals. Congratulations to their new president. He just took office on the 1st, Dale DeJaneiro, and they are holding their event this summer at the Hyatt Regency in Newport Beach. That will be August 5th and 6th. So again, plugging into events in our industry is important, making sure that you know what's going on out there, but also the collaboration and the friendships and the ability to call someone and go, hey, I got this situation. Can I bounce it off of you? Especially for people who are working from home. It is
Yeah.
rough out there. So it is that water cooler recreation that you need to do, whether it's, following us every week, which some people call it that, or whatever it is you plug into, but the in-person thing is really, really important.
I
Really.
think, I think you should organize road trips from Northern California to the camp event. Rent a car, a four-door sedan, assign one person. You get the Doritos, you get the Diet Cokes, you get the Slim Jims or whatever. The
We'll
hot
do a
dog,
caravan.
Costco hot, huh?
Do a caravan. We'll pass all that stuff amongst the cars as we're
Yeah,
driving down.
road trip. Road
So
trip.
I have a sedan, but I think we need something bigger because once I pick you and Kevin up, it's full, it's almost full. So we'll get something bigger and we'll do a little, yeah, we'll see. So anyway, another little thing to note, which I found out the hard way this week, was how important it is to have a bank account at more than one institution. So I had all of my, checking, savings, money market at one place. And guess what? They are being held ransom right now, and nobody has had access to anything
Is
since
that
Saturday.
Patelco?
It is.
Yeah.
That's since Saturday morning.
That's
And
my lead off tomorrow morning.
is it really? Oh my God. Can I just tell you, God bless them. I feel bad for them. This can happen to anyone, and it does. And it is such an issue out in the marketplace. But I just want to say, if you do not have multiple accounts and money in different places, do it today. Because I spent yesterday scrambling, having to open a new account. And then, by the way, had forgotten completely. They look at me, they run the credit, the check, right? And she looks at me, she goes, you can tell there's a problem. She goes, have you put a credit freeze on your credit recently? And I said, no. And she said, are you sure? And I'm like, no. And it took me like, she had to ask me like 4 times and finally went, oh my God, somebody tried to get a Chase account in my name. And I did do that. And they told me to call the bureaus and I'm in the business, for God's sake. How do I not? Anyway, so bottom line is you're a little dingy when this is happening to you. And so plan ahead.
It's scary stuff.
I don't
Scary
even
stuff.
know if I'm getting paid on Friday because they're still down. We're on day 4 and there's no end in sight. They're literally saying we don't know. So make sure you're open. And while I was in the bank, by the way, this was another horrible thing. Somebody had brought in this very elderly gentleman, and he had, I don't know if it's elder abuse. Someone was,
Be a loan officer.
he was, in all seriousness, he was, somebody was taking all the money out of his bank accounts and they were trying to work through it. And it was, I was trying to like not hear because it's heartbreaking. So anyway, so just,
There's a that's another thing I maybe I'll lead off with this instead. I saw a headline about there are certain car 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 lots. What am I trying to say here? Where you buy a car.
Car lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Good job. You got it.
dealerships
Dealerships.
who have
Okay.
gone back to pad and paper because of a fear of things like that happening.
Well, weren't the car dealerships held hostage like a week or two ago? And someone told me they paid $22 million to, uh, they were held ransom, it was the whole thing. And by the way, recently I had some borrowers who I was on the phone with the husband and wife, and I said, hey, you have some options as far as filling out an application. Do you want to, I can send you the link and you can fill it out online, or we can do it together on the phone. And they said, we would really, and they were not, by the way, they were younger than me by quite a bit. And so I just want to point that out. I wasn't talking to 900-year-olds. So, and they said, can we just do it now? So I'm doing this app over the phone, which felt great because this is what we used to do. And we'd have a conversation and you get to know your borrower a little bit. And at some point the wife says, oh, thank God you're doing this. This is so nice. And it just makes me think we need to be offering this, like be more than just the button, right? And so offer as much interaction, and then they can choose not to. I mean, they could say, listen, I don't care that much about you, and I just want my loan, and could you just, tell me what the rate is? Okay, those are probably not my favorite people. And but anyway, bottom line is offer those options to your borrowers because some of them want them. It's surprising. I was telling Kevin, I talked about this during the pandemic where I had a guy who was in tech who came in to sign every single document. Every time he had a signature, he refused to do the e-signing and came in. And I kept wondering whether he was, lonely, whether I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, don't make assumptions.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse, I think. I mean, you really are making my mind click, and people tease me for going into a bank to deposit a check, but I do, generally speaking. And you see some of these AI produced interviews, like the LA Laker coach, talking about LeBron James making them sign Bronny, and anyway, and it's all just made up. It's all
Oh,
just
wow.
it's
Oh,
all
wow.
just they make their lips move and they've synthesized the voice. And it's just going to get worse and worse in terms of, campaign. We've
Yep.
got election in 4 months. Who knows what some clip is going to have Biden saying or Trump saying.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's kind of humorous, but there's some very nefarious things that can be done in terms of I get a phone call from somebody and it sounds like my son or my daughter.
Yes.
Right.
It's
Yes.
scary stuff. Scary
It
stuff.
is scary. And my youngest son is doing an AI internship and some research this summer in between he's going to be a senior next year in college. And he goes, Mom, Mary, you don't even know. He goes, what's coming is so mind boggling. And I mean, there's so much hair on it as far as the implications for all of us. So we really need to just stay aware.
And people and IT, the computer science is kind of like biologists. Just because you can recreate a woolly mammoth doesn't mean that
You
maybe
should.
you should. Jurassic Park. You ever see that
Yes.
movie?
Yes.
And so these computer scientists is like, oh, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. Well, do
But
you
should
really
you?
want to? And ethics, the study of ethics and people's ability to think ethically has not kept pace with some of these advancements in science or IT. I don't know. We're really getting off the mortgage path here. But
All right. So let's
scary
just go
stuff.
back to, by the way, we were talking about mortgage because we're talking about the things that impact our clients.
And we only have 5 minutes left.
It's all tied together. But let's take this last bit and let's talk about what you think we're looking forward to in the mortgage business in the next, 6 months towards the end of the year. You said companies are looking better. That sounds like they're making more money, is the consensus positive? Tell us what you're hearing out there in the marketplace.
Well, I would say that it's good to own servicing.
Mm,
You're a lender or you work for a lender, because many companies have never accumulated servicing during the pandemic or have sold off all of their
right.
servicing because they needed the cash here in the last year. And so the servicing, interestingly enough, Freedom Mortgage has been buying up servicing right and left. If I could buy stock in Freedom Mortgage, I would. They're very astute in terms of churning a pipeline and retaining borrowers. So it's important for companies to own servicing. I would say, getting back to the common theme of our discussion today is it's a personal business, and I continue to see individuals and companies play to their strengths, whether you're a credit union or a bank or an IMB or a broker, whatever. I mean, there are certain things that you're good at. And I use the example of my commentary. I'm good at being consistent 6 days a week. It goes out, rain or shine, no matter where I am. And so I'm not always the sharpest tool in the shed, or I may not have the greatest observations, but I'm consistent. And when people don't get it by 6 a.m. West Coast time, they're emailing me saying, "Are you alive?" So it's usually some computer snafu on their side, but consistency is important in the people business. And so what I'm seeing over the next 6 months or 6 years, it is companies and individuals playing to their strengths and being able to sit there across the desk from somebody and answer questions, whether you're a vendor or whether you're a lender. Having that knowledge base and having that wisdom and experience, I think, will continue to matter in this environment.
I got a call the other day from a client who is in commercial real estate, specifically office space. And so he wanted to know something about financing on a building. And I said, "How are you doing?" And held my breath, thinking, who knows what, his year
Right.
is looking like. And he's really successful typically. He goes, "I'm having a great year." I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean you're having a great year? And it was really interesting because what he said is he is not just doing office space now. He's doing all sorts of different kinds of commercial real estate. And it really is what I'm seeing. I mean, not just for myself, but for other people too, where the people who are surviving in this market and even thriving in this market are not one trick ponies. So we've either expanded our repertoire when it comes to the loans that we do and the scenarios we're willing to talk about and what rates we're willing to quote, and do something different, do something more, learn a new part of the business. There's so much to what we do. And so just be open and work hard, but don't just sit there shuffling through your email and, doing busy work. Like, do things proactively, right?
On that note,
On that note, Rob, you're so cute when you smile. Love it. Love it. I think
I have
Kevin's zoned out. He's like leaning on his hand and about to go to sleep. So,
I've got my son calling me, wondering why I'm not on his call.
oh, well, here you go. With
Yeah.
that,
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
we love having you. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We'll see you
Thank you,
next
Rob.
Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye, guys. Have a good week and happy
Have
4th of
some Guinness,
July.
Kevin.